Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. My name is Sarah, and today my co-host Carrie Bennett and I are going to be making these complex topics of quantum biology and circadian biology understandable to the everyday person. Thank you so much for tuning in. We ask that if you are listening on audio only, that you take a moment to leave us up to a 5-star review. And if you're on YouTube, leave us a like, leave us a comment. It will help to get the show out to more people. And before we jump into today's topic, just a quick reminder to head down to the show notes and check out my free resources as well as Carrie's free resources. We also do have courses on a variety of topics. If you are hoping to dive deeper, Carrie and I both have practitioner courses available as well for anyone who wants to begin to bring these topics to their clients and help them to implement these strategies into their daily lives. So check those out. We also have a co-taught course called Quantum Fertility that is available that allows people and practitioners to work on their fertility using these principles of quantum biology and circadian biology. Again, thank you so much for listening or watching today's show, whichever one you are doing. And let's go ahead and jump into it now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Quantum Conversations. Carrie and I are so excited to have you here today. And what are we talking about today, Carrie?
UV light. Woohoo! But really what we're going to do is help you realize how healing UV light can be, because we're really only taught to fear the sun. That it's bad. And and then, the other aspect of it is, well, you could make vitamin D from it, but don't do it with the sun. Just take this supplement, right? It's just as good. And I really want to dispel that for people and get people to feel confident about using the ultraviolet light for healing, because it does so much for our bodies.
Yeah.
And so I think the best way to go about this would be just to be like, how did we get so far off base about the sun when literally for millennia, cultures have revered the sun.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you look at so many different religions and populations and cultures and traditions, and they always held the sun in this utmost esteem. And now all of a sudden, what was it? This maybe just when this cover came out, right? When it was probably the start of this past summer, where there was a woman on the cover of a magazine and she was covered.
I was going to mention it. And what was it? The truck drivers and...
Yeah. So one of it was where this woman was covered head to toe, literally had gloves on her hands, sunglasses.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Right?
That one. Yes.
And the title was like how you can avoid every aspect of the sun, right? Sun, all
like summer. The New York Times or something like that.
It was the Times, maybe the Times, the Atlantic, something like that.
That one was about a year ago. That one went
scary. That one was scary. And then there's other ones too, where they'll say, well, if ultraviolet light is so good for us, why do these truck drivers who are exposed to a lot of light, why do they have skin cancer on one side of their face and wrinkles and on one side of their face? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about all of that.
I definitely want to talk about that, because that's a big one people will come in the comments and freak out about. And I'm like, well, let's question all of that, because I think that it's doing a huge disservice to people. And we are not the kind of people, I just want to throw it out there because I just talked about this a little bit on my channel, who are going to tell you, go lay out in the middle of the day for, naked.
For 3 hours.
Right. Because first of all, ain't
nobody got time for that.
No one's got time for that. Number two, someone who is a northern haplotype, they don't need that much time in direct sunlight, I find I do so much better in like these 10 to 20 minute bursts throughout the day. I do the burst.
For sure.
Yeah. So we're not going to be like that, because there's a lot of people out there that just act as though more is better and there's no danger at all and it's okay. And it's a multifaceted conversation for sure, but let's maybe just dispel, talk about where this information came from in the first place. Let's start there.
It's a great place to start, because I needed to prove to myself back in the day when I was first learning about this, well, okay, well, how did we get so far off base?
Mhm.
And I encourage anyone who's interested in this to really look up the heliotherapy clinics that
Mhm.
were developed mainly in high latitude locations like Switzerland, in the Alps, for example, where you had these amazing physicians in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Mhm.
They had patients come from all over the world to these clinics to get healed of so many different diseases, from lupus to infectious diseases to arthritis to diabetes, you name it. At one point, I believe they had documented 120 different disease diagnoses that were healed using their heliotherapy protocol. And so
Mhm.
here you have these doctors up on a mountain. And for those of you who don't know, the higher you get up in the sky, the stronger the ultraviolet light is going to be. So they're in a very strong ultraviolet environment. And they're taking these patients in a very controlled way, which we can talk about if we want to. And they're literally healing their patients from so many different diseases. And these clinics got so that, I mean, you had more and more of them developed all throughout mostly Europe because
Mhm.
of the amazing results that these physicians were getting. But in a very similar time, you also had researchers in a lab who were using cell cultures in a petri dish. And they were
Mhm.
shining these petri dishes with what are called arc lamps. Picture what like a welder's torch type style lamp.
Mhm.
And they were putting those arc lamps, that light, into the petri dish. And they said, "But look, this is ultraviolet light, and it's mutating the DNA in these cells, right? It's
Mhm.
damaging these cells." And
Mhm.
so that's where we got to the research that says, but ultraviolet light damages the DNA and can cause cancer.
Mm.
And, I mean, you can
That's what
imagine
drives me so
about.
crazy about so much scientific research is like I'll get people that are like, "Oh no," because I said, what was it the other week? I had said
You
something about
always say something if you.
God bless. Like, there's a certain amount of that I do, just because it brings new people in and it gets them interested in the information so I can
Sure,
teach them more.
sure.
But it does create an interesting headache for myself. But I had put up a post about breastfeeding women and how oxytocin
Mm,
allows you to kind of skip over that 4 hours of darkness that you need to make melatonin because it's a master hormone. And someone said if you have leptin resistance that you can't make oxytocin. And I was like, where in the damn hell did you get that idea from? And I was like, you just go ahead, sure, send me where you're getting this from. It was some obscure petri dish study on oxytocin and I'm like, no, this
yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother, and it'd be really great probably to have Sarah Pugh back on at some
yeah, to
point for
talk
this
about
the
the
research
studies,
stuff.
research, why a lot of it is just like, why that's not
Also,
applicable. Yeah.
coming from someone who's a very quote unquote science minded,
She's done it. She's done it. She's worked in a lab. She's worked on studies and she
she
sees them.
gets it.
Yeah, she said, like, okay, we did this experiment 20 times, and on time 19, it looked the way we wanted it to. So we
And so,
discarded all the other failed ones and we used this beautiful one as the study. Like,
yeah.
oh, huh.
Yeah, there's so much. I used to really revere science,
Study.
and studies and research, but now it's just like, to me, it's interesting because I'll refer to some, when we talk
Yeah,
about
totally.
ultraviolet light,
Absolutely. Because you want to give things some credibility, absolutely.
but at the same time, it's no longer the end all be all,
Right.
right? Like, if
Right.
there isn't a research article for this exact, it's like, gosh, I could literally design any research study I wanted to right now to prove whatever I wanted.
Totally. Totally. I
I
mean,
mean,
you really could.
that's what the government tried to do with the NTP study, that toxicology study on EMFs. Do you remember that
Oh,
study? There's
no, I
a
didn't know about that one.
long-term EMF study that was done where the toxicology group took rats and
Mm,
mice and they put them into two different environmental exposures. One was an environmental exposure where they were getting about a daily dose of cell phone usage in terms of
mm.
radiation. And then there
Okay.
was the control group, right? But what you have to read the fine print on is that they put the rats and mice in a cage that was too small for them to stand up fully on their hind legs. And that automatically puts them in a stressed out state. They hate that. They like to be able to
Oh,
fully extend their bodies.
yeah.
So that means the control group was also being stressed. And so this one had the stress of not being able to stand up, but also the radiation. They were trying to wash out the difference, right? Because they were trying to compare. They were trying to basically stress both groups out to say, oh, look, both of these groups developed these inflammatory conditions or these anomalies or these cancers or whatever it was. And so therefore it's inconclusive. This evidence is inconclusive. And what they found, in spite of that, was that even though they tried to control the study because of that, to kind of maybe manipulate the results, they still found that those that were exposed to the cell phone radiation developed cancers at a faster rate, heart cancers, or brain cancers, blood cancers. So, and even Schwann cell carcinomas. So it was it's just interesting when you look at research and you're just like, the average person is never going to be able to, no offense, the average person, but unless you know to look for these things, you're just going to get this research article handed to you that has this headline. You read the last, and what most people do is they read the title, they read the last sentence of the abstract, and they claim this as proof. But you're
not reading what happened, how did they come to this conclusion,
where's
that was
the data points, all that, it's manipulated.
That's what people are doing these days. That's what people are doing to get clicks and views, is they're taking these studies that 95% of people are not going to go and actually look at the study. So if I'm actually going to take the time to put a study with something, I want it to be like, oh, I'm going to read this and say, yeah, I can draw that exact conclusion, absolutely. But what a lot of people are doing, like they're doing with keto right now, it's a big thing because I still have a lot of connections in the ketogenic community. I still think it's a very useful tool for people. It doesn't need to be your whole personality, but it's a great tool. But, there's all these kind of like bro scientists and people, and they're just kind of trying to smear keto because of a rat study that was done. And I'm like, really? Like, they're just stop,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that brings up a good point though, because once you got out of the Petri dish testing for ultraviolet light,
moved to animals,
they
right?
moved, but rodents. you know what rodents they used? Hairless, hairless mice. And hairless rats.
Number one, they're nocturnal, and number two,
they don't have any hair. They're nocturnal and they don't have any hair. Like, how would they have any ultraviolet defenses like we do in our skin? It's like, no. But unfortunately, that's exactly where the ultraviolet research went. It was, oh, look what we can do with this artificial source of ultraviolet light. And mind you, an arc lamp is a powerful source of ultraviolet light that is nothing like sunlight, right?
The sun. Well, but
sunlight's balanced.
All of these studies that I have been able to find, I know you've dove into the research. A lot of us in this community have gone into this research on UV light and cancer and all these different issues. Again, not saying, please go lay in the sun for 6 hours. And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the sun is different than these lamps completely. It contains a blend of infrared, which helps the body to make subcellular melatonin, which can help to clean up some of the ROS that UV light does create.
Protects the mitochondria, right?
Protects the mitochondria, right? And then it creates free energy when UV strikes the skin through increased electron production. There's so many things that UV light does that is positive for the body because it shows up in combination with these other frequencies as well, correct?
Well, totally. Right. Yeah. It's the fact that when you have ultraviolet light from the sun, you have all the other frequencies, like you said, to build exclusions on water. That's a redox booster to give us free electrons. Basically, that's antioxidant protection, energy, to make the mitochondria more efficient at producing subcellular melatonin, water, ATP. I mean, so
we got melanin,
right?
Yeah.
That's another thing too, right? Cells, the cells on the surface of our skin, they're melanocytes, right? Meaning they can make melanin. So you better be studying cells of a tissue culture that can make melanin as an endogenous defense mechanism. And if you can't, it's just all these little things. So mind you, and this is kind of like a story that you see put on repeat, right? Okay. So now all of a sudden, how can we make money off of this? The sun causes cancer. Now we get to, like you said, right? The sunscreen industry,
Well, people aren't even
sunglasses.
doing it with blue light now. Like
Yeah.
because there is research that shows blue light, like the light I'm sitting under right now, causes cancer.
Temporarily.
It's temporary. I'll go out. I will go lay in the sun before I have my afternoon meeting with my. Actually, I'll have my afternoon meeting out on my patio where there's tons of infrared. But yeah, this kind of light that I'm in indoors behind glass, behind windows, has been shown to create cancer, to be an issue. And now they're coming out with this lotion that you can put on your skin to protect yourself from blue light. And I'm like, I wouldn't touch that either. Like, I just wouldn't do it. I would just try to turn off the lights and crack a window and
Yeah.
stay out of it if you can. Don't put stuff on your skin, you know?
Well, number one, it's going to have the chemicals, right? And number
Right.
two, anytime you filter out a certain color, you change the way things are signaled. This
Mm.
goes back to the truck driver story,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
So
that's
yes,
exactly the truck driver story.
yes, the truck driver is outside, but guess what's happening when he's outside in quote unquote natural light, right? He's behind glass.
Glass.
Guess what? Modern glass, especially truck driver glass and window glass, guess what it blocks? What does it block?
UV,
And
red, and near
infrared,
infrared.
right?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
exactly. The near infrared.
yep.
So you're literally concentrating blue light onto his face.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah, because
that
when you
is
take the red and near infrared out, like we just mentioned, there are protective elements in those frequencies that people need. And yeah, that's why the glass is so harmful, is that you're taking out the protective benefits, and it's like an alien form of light that your body's like, what do I even do with this? You know?
and likely those truck drivers are also wearing sunglasses,
Right.
which can
Right.
also change their ability to, generate appropriate melanin and other protective mechanisms,
Mhm.
POMC, for example. And,
Yeah.
so it's, yeah, I mean, we're not comparing apples to apples in so
Mm-mm.
many of these incidences here. And
Yeah.
when you utilize the sun and in a gradual yet healing way, which is exactly what was done at those heliotherapy clinics, you
Right.
can see amazing results.
Yep.
Amazing results. But the thing is that for a lot of people, it may have to be gradual, and that's okay. So that's where I love when you put out that video of like you don't have to be in the sun for 4 hours a day sunning yourself, right?
And
Because
don't. Most people
no,
should.
most people shouldn't, right? And so the idea is that like literally in these heliotherapy clinics, these were very, very ill people.
Mm-hmm.
They put their feet into the ultraviolet light for a minute and then
Mm.
wheeled them back in. Then the next day, the feet for a minute, then their lower legs for a minute, wheeled them back in. So like a very slow,
Mhm.
gradual buildup. And that is how they ultimately heal their bodies, right? By
Mm.
getting them kind of to slowly but surely adapt. And so I've had clients who, no joke, have had to do sunlight exposures either due to
Yep.
migraines or histamine or POTS in literally 30-second
Yep.
increments.
Absolutely.
But do it, because I've seen it so many times that when people stick with that slow, gradual
Mhm.
process, they start to adapt, and then they can handle more of the light, and then
Yeah.
they can get the 20-minute healing session that they're looking to get in on a consistent basis, and things like that. So
That's the thing, is we underestimate the body's ability to adapt a lot of the time. And our bodies were actually built to adapt to things like the sun, to being outside, because that's how we got to this place. When things started, there were no homes, there were no LED lights, there was no air conditioning, there was no electricity, none of the stuff that we have today was around. And so
right.
our bodies were made to adapt to these sorts of environments. And I've even heard the whole haplotype conversation, that it's hard. I think it's harder for an equatorial, southern haplotype to adapt to northern haplotype. But a northern person like myself or you can adapt easier to being in an equatorial environment. They can actually kind of shift their haplotype. I don't know how you feel about that type of
Hmm.
school of thought, Carrie, but
Yeah, I've not
it's
heard. Yeah, I've not
interesting.
heard of that or looked that up at all.
Yeah.
But to me, when someone has a haplotype designed for a high solar yield environment, that's
Mhm.
where their body is really learns how to thrive. And
Right.
so it may be winters may be difficult,
Yeah. It's just
for some
harder.
people. Yeah.
Keto is more difficult. Winters are
Yep.
more difficult. Like
Exactly.
went over that in my leptin course. We had like a little module on haplotype. And it's like, yeah, when you have, someone of a Southern haplotype living in Michigan or a northern state, and they're trying to do keto in the winter, just or keto period, and it's going to be harder for them. You're going to have to make more concessions for that person, take things a lot slower. It doesn't mean they can't do it. It can't be done, but it's just harder for them to do those sorts of things.
And they may, and I'm probably going to get slammed in the comments for this, but they may benefit from some really appropriate ultraviolet light exposure in the winter, a spurty, a tanning bed, I mean, something just to throw out there as a potential, right? Our a sauna maybe needs the heat a lot more. I mean, our buddy Corey,
he's in Florida and he's like, I'll never go further north than where.
Yeah. Like he doesn't understand how I can live in Michigan in the winter, but he is literally, I think, an L0 or an L1, like the equatorial haplotype.
Yeah, exactly. So he's not, necessarily supposed to live where you would and couldn't thrive. But I also question the need for northern haplotypes to get as much sunlight as somebody who is like Corey, right? I don't think that you need to go out.
Move the equator, move to the equator.
I don't think everyone needs to move to the equator. I honestly don't. I think it can be helpful for some people that are like really, really sick. Yeah. But even then they're not going to be able to stand that kind of UV index. They're not going to be able to stand that sort of thing right off the bat. Like they're going to have to kind of do what you said and microdose it and take a lot of time to adapt up to it,
Yeah, no, totally. I think that if you have a northern haplotype, or you have like a haplotype that can uncouple in response to cold, right?
Yeah.
Then you can take advantage of the cold.
Exactly.
And the dark.
Magnetism. I think the magnetism in those areas is a lot greater as well. It's closer to the pole.
Exactly.
So it's right. If you're in an area with less UV, less warmth, all of that stuff, then there are other things in your environment like darkness, cold, and magnetism. They have the springs and the hot springs and all those things up there in Norway, Sweden. They have all the saunas. They've got all that stuff. And it's because, and those people are meant to be taking advantage more of those things. And they're not going to have a lot of strong UV light.
Yeah, exactly. I think that overall, I think that humans can adapt to their location in general, but I also don't. And I don't think that there's any one perfect place on the planet for everyone because of the things that we've talked about.
Agree. That's why there's no one size fits all. And it's good to understand the nuances of these things so you can look at yourself and make the best decision for yourself and your health and what's going to work.
Well, and there's so much that's outside of quote unquote the quantum biology realm that doesn't get taken into consideration. Like I would not move away from my family. My family means so much to me, right?
That's what somebody said under one of my videos the other day. They were like, I don't care, because I had somebody on my channel and they had moved across the world to heal, and somebody commented, I don't care how sick I ever got, I would never leave my family. And I actually feel that way too. I couldn't leave my family, I really couldn't. So Carrie, what is the biggest thing you would say with people and red light therapy panels that doesn't get talked about a lot?
So many people talk about how inconvenient it is to kind of set them up. And sometimes they just want to put them directly on their body, and you really can't because of the non-native EMFs.
Yeah, exactly. That is why we are both so excited that we have these little battery operated bond charge panels. You can put them right here on your skin and you're not going to be getting all that non-native EMF. You can set it up for your kids, put it right next to them, and you don't have to set them up in front of a big panel and make them sit 6 to 12 inches away, right?
Yeah. So like when my kids have stomach aches or things, that is my go-to. I pull out that panel, I lift up the shirt, I just set it on them, and they could still be reading, coloring, doing what they're doing while at the same time getting the red light therapy, like you said, in a very kid-friendly way.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of parents just even put them up on the ear when they have ear infections, earaches. It is just so, I'm just doing it here on my ear right now. It feels so good. So these are absolutely fantastic. You can use the code QuantumPod, all one word. There'll be a link down in the show notes to save on yours. And these are from Bond Charge. So if you are someone who just wants the convenience of a red light therapy panel, doesn't want to worry about non-native EMF, can just put it right on your skin and get skin healing benefits, as well as infrared that can penetrate through and actually provide some mitochondrial support as well. These are absolutely fantastic. So check the link out down in the show notes and use the code Quantum Pod to save on yours. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like there's those variables to take into consideration too, that, or let's say you've got such a strong community like of friends here. I mean, there's so much more that we need to consider, or just fear. Like I do find that people who start to learn this information, they go, "Oh no, I live in the Pacific Northwest and it's never sunny." Well, number one, that's not true, because the sun is still there behind the clouds. And number two, that fear alone
will
can
make you sick.
Yeah, can make you sick, can inhibit your progress. And
There's
so
no perfect place. That's the thing. I think people
listen,
have to
I live in Southwest Michigan. Like, right? Like it's not the sunniest place on earth, not the warmest place on earth. You just make the most of it. I don't care. It's like, as soon as I made it a commitment to go outside and get as much morning light as my daily schedule allowed on any given day, then regardless of the weather, that was it. That's what I needed to do, and just commit to that, So winter is not bad anymore. Cloudy days don't depress me. Rainy days don't depress me, right? Because you just still go through the habit of taking that morning walk whenever possible. Go outside.
Under my covered patio.
Exactly.
Out here the other day, there was a crazy lightning storm at sunrise, and we just sat outside and watched the lightning storm. It was kind of fun. Everyone was still sleeping. Yeah, you go outside anyway. We were just feeling that energy. It was really interesting.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know there's something about watching storms coming in that's just so fascinating.
It really is. It really is.
Back to the UV stuff too. Yeah. So other nuances with that would be, I mean, if anyone wanted to go to PubMed, some of the more fascinating things to look at is when researchers compare populations who get more sunlight versus populations who don't, and their disease prevalence.
Yes, that's the Swedish cohort.
I think there's multiple ones like that Swedish cohort one. Yep.
Yeah. It's actually a health hazard to not get sunlight. So
yeah. And so what was interesting about that is they looked at a group of people and they were like, yes, like you said, people who got the most sunlight were least likely to get cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, breast cancer, things like they had a whole host of things, right? But what they said, they ultimately did say was, though, someone I think made a comment, like researchers can reply and have commentary and something along the lines of, yeah, but look at this group of people, they ultimately are most likely to die of cancer. And the reason they're most likely to die of cancer is because they live so much longer than this other cohort of people. And at some point they may not continue the same sun habits. And so it's like, it's fascinating how you can still cherry pick the data to try to prove your side. But the bottom line is, when you look at these studies time and time again of looking at people actually living in the sun, you even see that those people who get the most sunlight are least likely to die of melanoma, even after a melanoma diagnosis, right? So like these things, I hope make you go, maybe we haven't been taught really the truth about what we need to learn about sunlight and how we can use it to support our health. And it's independent. Some of the great research too is showing that it's independent of vitamin D levels.
That's what I was going to say, because everyone is like obsessed with vitamin D. UVB is not available for a lot of the year for a lot of people.
Especially Sweden.
Exactly. Exactly. And Sarah Kay, she just went back to Leeds to UK yesterday. She flew out, and she doesn't get a lot of UV there. She doesn't get a lot of sun there. And it's kind of interesting that she's even said, like, I prefer being there than here in the 33rd latitude, where we've had a ton of sunshine the last couple months that she's been here. And she's just like, yeah, it's nice, but after a while, it's, you can't be in it all the time. And there's so many benefits to just being in a lower UV environment and being outside as well, too. Like, that's what she really thrives in, kind of a lower UV, probably because of some of her heritage and ancestry, but not needing to be in this direct UV with a UV of like 11, 12, 13, like we get here.
And hot, right?
Oh, it's so hot here. It's ridiculous.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there you go right there. It's like everyone, it's about taking advantage of the light in your environment,
Yeah.
and just going outside, and yeah, independent of vitamin D. And
Mhm.
so almost all studies I've looked at, I want to say all actually, have failed to show a direct benefit, like a one-to-one benefit in terms of if you just supplement
Right. With
D3.
vitamin D. Maybe we should get Jim on sometime. I don't know.
Yeah, Jim's great. Yeah, absolutely. Let's get Jim
It'll have
on.
to be
There's
like a
not,
two-parter.
I was going to say well, maybe a three-parter based on how long we make these episodes. But Jim, for those of you who don't know, Jim Stevenson, he is like
And
the
he's a PhD too. So
but a citizen scientist.
he is
Literally,
a
he is
citizen
that citizen
scientist with a
scientist who,
PhD.
with a PhD, who just wanted to figure out what's going on with his vitamin D
Yeah,
story. And yeah,
exactly.
learned a
He's just
lot from Jim.
because his wife almost died from being over supplemented with vitamin D.
Yeah.
And then he started being like, oh, wait a second. This is actually messing up people's health to over even supplement period. Some people were having problems with thyroid,
Mhm.
kidneys,
Yeah.
calcium, just all kinds of issues going on with supplementation because humans think like they're so smart and they understand the human body. They understand like this much of the human body. And as long as we're stuck in this biochemical model of you put something in and you get something out, it's dead end, like the body is capable of so much more than we give it credit for. And just adding certain things in is not going to get the same outcome as being in the sun. It's not going to happen.
Well, absolutely. And it's not just D3. I mean, I love how when you look at how the process of vitamin D is made, right, in the skin, cholesterol ultimately becomes pre-vitamin D, vitamin D, and then there's other metabolites that can interconvert. And the early research that you look at, and not even that early, there's still some more modern research on the vitamin D metabolites, calls them inert, or like basically unnecessary, about just because you haven't figured out what they're useful for yet. Like that's what we call them. It's like, oh, those aren't important. Those dozen metabolites besides D3 aren't important. It's like, body doesn't work that way.
That's why I really I got so much crap about talking about collagen powders, but I just don't even like protein powders in general for people because of the same thing. Like you think that you're going to grind something up, make it into a powder. It's going to do the same thing in your body that an egg is going to do, or
Sure.
a steak. It's
or
not
gelatinous meats, whatever. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not going to do the same thing. And then this whole idea of like you eat collagen, it makes your body make more collagen, or you eat a certain thing, it's going to make your body make more of it. That's also flawed. I'd rather look at some stuff like red light therapy, grounding, cold, all these things to encourage the body to have its own endogenous production. Ingestion is a small thing that we can do for ourselves. Don't go out and eat Pop-Tarts and McDonald's, but I'd rather you look at supporting the body holistically from these other ways rather than being hyper focused on getting the right chemical formula for your body,
Totally. Yeah, no, absolutely. That whole collagen talk, that's something we probably need to table.
Maybe we should do an episode. We have to deal with this.
Well,
we must deal with it, Carrie.
I have a bit of a nuance, a slightly different take on it, because I think that there can be a therapeutic way to utilize it occasionally or for a certain window of time, without the idea that, oh no, I have to take my daily collagen powder for the rest of my life, right? Because I do think the building blocks for a lot of people are important. I also think, though, that one of the main building blocks is glycine, and I think people can also do glycine. There's certain, and it's not glycine that has the deuterium. It's really, ironically, the hydroxyproline seemed to
That's exactly what it is. That's what Laszlo, Dr. Boros emailed me. He said that's what it is.
Yeah, I saw a SEAL study. But there's nuance, though, too. With the collagen stuff, because what they found with SEALs, which I found, they found that those SEALs hoard so much deuterium in their proline, and specifically hydroxyproline, that went beyond their dietary exposures. Meaning there's what they ate, and even the seawater. It was so.
I was going to say the seawater is probably what did it,
but it didn't, because the seawater was lower,
and they were up north.
the deuterium content in their collagen was what they said abnormally high in their deuterium. So there's again, this is us humans trying to say that we know more than nature in terms of like how it works, because
there's always a purpose for things though. Like that's my whole thing with like the biochemical model is like, we think we know, but we don't actually know the purpose for certain things. That's why taking a supplement of a compound that's quote unquote low or missing in your body is not going to do the same thing as supporting it through this kind of holistic lens.
Well, and so many people have probably by this point heard that Joe Rogan interviewed Terrence Howard.
I haven't listened to that yet, but yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go into a ton of details on that, but what I appreciate about Terrence Howard in that particular interview was the fact that he's highlighting Walter Russell's work. So I do want to put it out there that periodic table that you see is Walter Russell's periodic table. And Walter Russell basically, and I agree with him 100%, basically showed that the way that atoms form is not this periodic table. It's in this continuum, and this continuum has octaves and harmonics of each other. And that these atoms, this is where alchemy comes into play. And alchemy is this concept that has been debunked because there's no possible way you could transform one atom into another atom. And that's actually BS, because when you look at what these atoms are, if you just view them as being on a continuum, and that with shifts and changes in energetic inputs or energetic unravelings, they can transform into something else. I don't want to go into those details there, but like, that's the thing. It's like, we think we even understand the periodic table of elements and we don't even have a clue, right? I really don't think we have a clue.
Zero.
So for people who want to look into that, get Walter Russell's books. They're fascinating things.
Interesting. Yeah. So
anyways, how does this go back to UV light? It doesn't. but like, we just want to get the message out there that like fearing sunlight is detrimental to health. Oh, and sunglasses, right? Sunglasses. So you talk about sunglasses because, again, of course, I broke my headphones. So go ahead and talk about sunglasses.
Well, I mean, it's just think about the fact that there's the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the eye is informing the brain about what time of day it is, what time of year it is. That's what one of its functions that it's doing, so that it can make appropriate hormones. So the POMC can do what it needs to do. Leptin, melanocortin pathway, all that stuff can be activated so that we can synthesize serotonin, dopamine, but all these other things are happening in the skin also to prepare the body to get stronger sunlight, or so the body can adjust to know, okay, wow, it's a UVI of 11. My eye sees it. I'm not shielding it and telling it's nighttime, right? I'm not blocking out. So my skin can actually start to prepare to receive and put in some protective mechanisms. And when we are blocking that off, I mean, we're shutting down a lot of hormonal pathways, one, but two, the skin is going to be a little bit more apt to burn or quote unquote get damaged because it hasn't been able to prepare itself to receive those stronger frequencies. That's my dumbed down version of what you would say.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. There's different what are called opsins in the eyes, right? That are looking to receive different wavelengths of light. And the one that's specific to UV light is called neuropsin. And so neuropsin has its own communication pathways to the brain that helps to, like you said, regulate the basically skin brain axis. It's communicating. People hear about the gut brain axis. There's a skin brain axis, and the light signals touching the skin need to match the light signals entering the eyes in order for that to sync up accordingly. And when it doesn't, that's where you can't make the melanin, you can't make the urocanic acid and other endogenous UV filters that we use to adapt and adjust to stronger and stronger ultraviolet light.
Exactly. So we'll get it, because I get it probably once a day. Cataracts, LASIK, contacts, glasses.
Yeah, sure. Ideally, you have naked eyes, number one, going outside, right? And so if you can go for a period, especially when you're sunning yourself and especially in the morning, if you could just wear glasses safely and sit if you need to, right?
Yeah.
Put them down, put them up, and just allow that natural light signaling to come into your eyes. That is absolutely ideal. There
Yeah.
are some contact lens brands, such as dailies,
Dailies.
certain brands of certain variations of the dailies that don't block the ultraviolet light.
Mm-hmm.
If you've had cataracts and you have an intraocular lens replacement, it likely will block a significant portion of the ultraviolet spectrum,
Yeah.
but you can't do a darn thing about it. So all you have to
That's
do,
the thing. Like, you can't do anything about it.
so it doesn't mean you're screwed. It means
No.
that you just continue to sync up the signals, and your brain will start to interpret that this wavelength entering will hopefully start to match up with what's touching your skin.
Yeah.
It's not going to be anywhere near the same as if you were having a dimming effect and a very strong, exactly, with the sunglasses.
Different.
So you'll still get the brightness, right, which is another key signal in terms of the intensity of light that your body is experiencing.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, there's nothing you can do about it if you have it now. And then there's also a complete misnomer that it's the ultraviolet light that's causing the cataracts and the macular degeneration in the first place, glaucoma. I don't know about you, but the vast majority of people get, like, I see
They're
that
not getting enough sunlight.
and when they do, they've got like the very black, no offense to my grandpa and Nani, but like, those super dark wraparound shades, right? That they put on when they go outside. And so it's not what's now being studied is this wavelength of light, which I think would be apropos that they're studying for things like the truck driver, what he's experiencing or she's experiencing. It's called high energy visible light in the literature, HEV or HEV vis. And what they're saying is, perhaps the higher energy visible light, AKA blue light, is also a contributing factor to this. And you're going to see the research
show it in China, the studies that's causing myopia in children, macular degeneration, because they're all glued to their screens. And what has been able to offset that in these children is more outdoor time.
And sterility, unfortunately. And like, it's quite crazy how much infertility and hormone imbalance and just a lack of libido, in terms of what should normally happen when one reaches a certain age, and it just doesn't, it's just not there because of, in part because of the excessive indoor time with blue light exposure. So
exactly. Yeah. So we're blaming the sun for what these LEDs and being indoors and being on screens and phones is actually, I think, is what's doing it. You will probably see the occasional odd, because people aren't living this way anymore, but farmers, people who have to be outside all day and they're not using eye protection. Yeah. That's why I'm saying there might be a slight bit of truth to some of this, but no one is really out in those environments. If you're someone who's on a boat, like I said this in my sun exposure video, if you're on a boat or if you're on sand, because when I go to the beach, like the sand can just hit my eyes and it hurts. Right. So yeah, if you want to put on glasses while you get somewhere to sit down or you're trying to seek some shade.
Or put a hat on. Yeah.
Put a hat on, but don't just lay out in the sun for, a bunch of time with sunglasses on, because it's going to be confusing, and you protect your eyes as necessary. You ideally are not staying outside, like in an environment like where you have to constantly protect your eyes.
Well, I mean, and if you like, so, when we were in Key West on a family vacation, my future brother-in-law, he chartered a sailboat, right? And the sailors all had sunglasses on. Makes sense, because when you get the light as it reflects off of a surface, that's different. That is reflected light. Yeah. So it's not the same as, so yes, I would potentially in those instances, or if I was a ski instructor, or I would potentially want to protect my eyes
they have glasses
at certain times
that are not as harmful as sunglasses. I think they're like gray, and they're a little bit more protective of the eye. So the important frequencies can still get through. Her name's Taylor. And she has a page called Optimizing Eye Health on Instagram. I've had her on my show. It's been a couple of years ago. I was pregnant the last time I had her on, but she was taught, because we had this whole conversation, because she's an optometrist, and she said, yeah, I recommend for people who are in those types of positions and jobs, there's a kind of a gray lens that you can get that's not going to have the same hormonal impact that sunglasses would.
Yeah, I thought actually Bon Charge makes some of those.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I thought, yeah, but I mean, I could be wrong. But yeah, no. Yeah, exactly. Right. So there are always potential,
but don't wear them around as a freaking fashion accessory. Yeah, that's like the problem is like, what drives me totally insane is if I go for a walk in the morning, it's around sunrise, UVA time, even when the sun's not even that high in the sky. And people are wearing sunglasses to like go walk their dogs and stuff, or like in the morning when the sun is not at its highest point in the sky. It's not super bright. These are the great healing frequencies. And you're just out walking, or on a cloudy day, I'll see people even using sunglasses. I'm like, I used to be that person though.
Well, I was that person too.
I can't, it's too bright. It's because I have like my eyes, because people are like, oh, I have really light eyes. Because I made a post on Instagram about sunglasses like 6 weeks ago or something. And I got, I have really light eyes. I'm like, hello.
I know. Same.
Mine are like so blue, like they're so light blue that they're almost kind of gray. Like they're very, very light. And I'm able to adapt,
Yeah. And it was an adaptation period for sure, but don't underestimate morning light and your ability to then adapt to the morning.
That's where you want to be, is morning sunlight. And even the evening is nice too. It's very nice and soothing. It has its own purpose as well. After Sarah and I were talking about afternoon sunlight and the UVA, how that could actually help with people who do a lot of snacking in the evening, you get the alpha MSH and, I find it to be very helpful with clients that are like into the nighttime eating and they're I'm like, do the morning stuff is primary. That is what's got to happen. But if you have the time to go outside in the afternoon, please do.
Even 10 minutes though.
Yeah. Just a little bit. You don't need hours, It
can make a difference. Yeah. Huge. No, it's true. But yeah, it's crazy. Like, typically when we vacation, because being in Michigan, we'll go someplace warmer, right? That has a beach, someplace tropical. And over the past decade that I've been aware of light and earthing and things like that, I've seen more and more people walking the beach, not only with sunglasses, but with shoes on.
Oh yeah. Shoes on the beach. I'm like, why?
I know. I'm like, you're completely divorcing yourself from everything except maybe the ions that you're breathing in. So cool. There you go. But I mean, like, and are structuring the water in your body, but like, oh, I know. I want to be like, take your shoes off, take your sunglasses off, soak it up.
Yeah, I know.
But that leads us to another future podcast topic of like how oftentimes friends and family members that you make these suggestions to are like the worst clients you could possibly imagine.
Totally the worst clients ever. Yeah. We'll talk about that on the next episode, because I think that is a question we get a lot in our communities of like, my cousin, my brother, I'm like, I get it. I love my family dearly, but yeah, we'll talk about it.
Anything else on UV light?
I think really what I like to anyway, I know you are the same, in empowering people to research things, is that's what I think people should do on this topic, is really go research. Because that's the challenge I always put out to people who really put these strong claims out. And I'm like, show me something done on humans with UV light. And let's actually look at that data together and make your own decision on whether or not that's significant or relevant to you.
Yeah. And also look to, I like the research, but I also like to look at historical uses of light.
Yes.
So that's another one too, right? Like go back in history. And how was light used? And it's such a beautiful story about, I mean, literally they built buildings in order to optimize light, right? And light exposures. And so it's just, just another way also to kind of, it's not just one lens of research or just the, maybe anecdotal esoteric evidence. It's like, look through both, look at a couple of different lenses and then make the decision yourself based on your level of health, based on where you live, based on your lifestyle, all the things, right? Like then you get to do with this information, you get to decide.
Yep. 100%. I like it. All right. Well, stay tuned for the next episode. We'll talk about friends, family members, all that good stuff.